I think when funding comes into it and you've got the so-called supernumerary hours, etc., I think you need to be very clear what that actually means as a individual doing the job. I think you need to be very clear from an organisational point of view what that means and what the funding is and isn't paying for. But there are things you should consider. Do we actually need to formalise this as a contract, a learning contract perhaps? Do we need to finalise or formalise this as a employment contract? I think out there in primary care land, because it's distributed in their small business units weekly linked together, that you will find a real diversity of business models and care models. You'll find a real diversity in opinions about whether you need to have a contract or not. But within that, I would strongly urge every candidate and every preceptor to make sure that there was as wide a knowledge of what was going on as possible. And by wide, I mean quite wide. I would suggest if there was a nurse practitioner working with a GP in a general practice or health centre, that they actually met everybody in the health centre. That the leadership of the health centre should actually have input into this and assent to it, not being forced, not being clandestinely forced to accept it. Governance, if they have governance, and quite often they don't, but if there's governance should be involved. And then I think partners around, so patients, why not advertise that? We've got a nurse practitioner candidate working here. Her name is X. Put a photo up on the staff board, all right? So I think you need to communicate all that stuff. It's all about relationships and communication, not about contract. But you should let other people, there's other stakeholders that need to know outside, like the pharmacy for the practice. I mean, if you're doing a prescribing practicum and stuff, they're going to have to be there. They're going to have to know who they are because you should be spending some time at the practice. NGOs and other related things, your local PHO. Introduce them, socialise them to the system that they're going to be working in.
For us, we've had to change the way we talk as well, because we used to have, there's a 2-hour wait to see the doctor, whereas now it's to see a clinician. Is what we kind of make sure we talk to families about, that they will be seeing nurse practitioners and clinical nurse specialists as well. So so it is the education of public as well.
So most of my nurse practitioner candidates have not worked in the same organisation. We've got around that by informing their organisation and my organisation and coming to clear understanding about the parameters and what we're doing. We usually swap sites. I go to them, they come to me, and that works particularly well. Never had a problem with it at all. I think if you take the basis to be a collegial relationship, the question of how do you manage performance is answered. The question of how do you address that performance, where do you do it, when do you do it, in front of whom do you do it, is already answered if you think of it as a collegial relationship. What would I do if this was me? What would I expect the response to be if somebody thought I had been suboptimal in my care or I'd done something wrong? How would I expect that to be approached to me? Would I expect to be told in a meeting with a whole lot of other people present? Would I expect it as a written warning? How would I expect that feedback to come back to me? And I think if you take that frame of reference, that's how you actually address a nurse practitioner. I think there are checks and balances in the system, and that again, you're not the only person. There are nurses who are mentoring and supervising this person, as well as academic supervisors, as straight mentors, etc. So I think you're going to get a diversity of opinion. So I don't think you have to have sort of the grand plan for nurse practitioners in your head to be a very effective supervisor, preceptor.
I think what we have in this department is a really good culture, so actually a very supportive culture, so that really helped the relationship between a supervisor and the candidate. I suppose we really looked at how we could supervise and support our clinical nurse specialists into nurse practitioner roles, and supervision came from our SMO group, myself and the nursing leadership in Children's ED, but really it was, so it's been a combined kind of supervision. They've all had one supervisor, but in general our whole SMO group have been active in supervision, supervising every shift. You have to commit to supervision. If you commit early and are able to have some resource for non-clinical time for teaching for them, you will reap the benefits.